70% of the guitar stuff on that record doesn't sound like guitar. It sounds like a keyboard or some other weird instrument.
The history of rock guitar is a fascinating tapestry woven from countless threads of innovation, tradition, rebellion, and craftsmanship. Throughout the decades, different movements and players have championed vastly different approaches to what the electric guitar should be and how it should be played. Some musicians have pursued technical mastery and complex compositions, while others have embraced simplicity and raw emotional power. These different philosophies have sometimes existed in tension with each other, creating debates about authenticity, skill, and the true purpose of rock music. The progressive rock philosophy. Progressive rock emerged in the late 1960s and flourished throughout the 1970s as musicians sought to expand the boundaries of what rock music could be. Guitarists in this tradition often came from backgrounds that included classical music training or serious study of jazz. They believed that rock music could be elevated to an art form that rivaled classical composition in its complexity and sophistication. Players in this tradition spent countless hours practicing scales, studying music theory, and perfecting their technique. They incorporated odd time signatures, complex chord progressions, and influences from classical, jazz, and world music. For these musicians, the guitar was an instrument capable of infinite expression, and mastering it required dedication, discipline, and years of study. They saw their role as pushing the instrument forward, discovering new sounds and techniques that had never been explored before. The progressive approach emphasized composition and arrangement. Songs might feature multiple movements, key changes, and intricate instrumental passages that showcased each musician's technical ability. Guitar solos were often carefully constructed rather than improvised, with every note serving a musical purpose. This approach required not just individual skill, but also tight ensemble playing, where each musician needed to navigate complex arrangements with precision. Progressive guitarists often used sophisticated equipment setups, but the focus remained on technique and composition rather than effects. While they might use chorus, delay, or other processors, the foundation was always strong playing ability. The goal was to create music that rewarded repeated listening with layers of complexity that revealed themselves over time. The punk rock response. Punk rock emerged in the mid-1970s as a direct reaction against what many saw as the excesses and pretensions of progressive rock and arena rock. Where progressive musicians had spent years developing their technical skills, punk pioneers deliberately embraced simplicity and rawness. This wasn't necessarily because they couldn't play more complex music, but because they believed rock had lost touch with its rebellious spirit and working-class roots. The punk philosophy held that rock music should be accessible to everyone, not just trained musicians. Anyone with basic equipment and something to say should be able to form a band and express themselves. Technical virtuosity was seen as less important than energy, attitude, and authenticity. Punk musicians often played with a deliberately rough edge, believing that polish and perfection could drain music of its vital force. This approach democratized rock music in important ways. It inspired countless young people to pick up instruments and start bands, even if they had no formal training. The message was that you didn't need to spend years in music school or master complex techniques to have something valid to say through music. Three chords and the truth became a rallying cry for a generation that felt excluded from the increasingly sophisticated world of mainstream rock. Punk guitarists focused on rhythm, power, and aggression rather than melodic complexity or technical showmanship. Songs were often fast, loud, and short, driven by simple chord progressions played with maximum energy. Guitar solos, when they appeared at all, were brief and raw rather than elaborate displays of technique. The aesthetic valued directness over sophistication, believing that too much musical education could actually get in the way of genuine expression. the blues rock tradition. While progressive rock looked forward and punk rock stripped things down, blues rock players maintained a deep connection to rock music's roots in American blues. These guitarists studied the masters of blues guitar and sought to channel that tradition through a rock context. They believed that the most powerful guitar playing came from feeling and soul rather than technical complexity or deliberate primitivism. Blues rock guitarists developed their style through years of studying classic blues patterns, learning the vocabulary of bends, vibrato, and pentatonic scales that defined the genre. While progressive players might see this as limiting or backward-looking, blues rock musicians believed they were tapping into something timeless and universal. The blues provided a framework that allowed for endless personal expression within established forms. This approach emphasized touch, tone, and emotional communication. A great blues rock guitarist could make a single note sing with more feeling than others could achieve with 100 notes. The focus was on serving the song and connecting with the audience on a gut level. Technical facility was valued, but always in service of expression rather than as an end in itself. Blues rock guitarists often became masters of improvisation, able to create spontaneous solos that told a musical story. While progressive guitarists might compose their solos note by note, blues rock musicians developed an intuitive command of their instrument that allowed them to respond in the moment to what they heard and felt. This created a different kind of virtuosity, based on deep internalization of musical vocabulary rather than formal composition. The atmospheric approach. Some guitarists pioneered an approach that emphasized texture and atmosphere over traditional notions of guitar technique. Rather than focusing primarily on guitar speed or complexity, these musicians explored what could be achieved by treating the guitar as a source of sound to be shaped and manipulated. They embraced effects processing, unusual techniques, and studio experimentation.
The atmospheric approach proved particularly influential in post-punk, alternative rock, and ambient music. It demonstrated that emotional impact and musical innovation could come from sound design and texture as much as from notes and chords. This expanded the vocabulary of what the electric guitar could be, showing that there were still new territories to explore, even as traditional techniques had been thoroughly mapped. The straight-ahead rock philosophy. Some of rock's most enduring music came from players who championed directness and power over either technical complexity or deliberate minimalism. These guitarists believed in strong riffs, memorable melodies, and playing that served the song above all else. They might have considerable technical ability, but chose not to showcase it through elaborate compositions or extended solos. This philosophy emphasized groove, energy, and the fundamental pleasure of loud rock and roll. The focus was on creating riffs that got into your head and stayed there, on maintaining a powerful rhythmic drive, and on knowing when simplicity was more effective than complexity. These players understood that sometimes a perfectly executed simple part was worth more than the most intricate solo. Straight-ahead rock guitarists were often the backbone of their bands, providing the foundation that allowed everything else to work. They might not seek the spotlight for extended showcases of technique, but their solid, driving playing made the songs work. This required discipline of a different kind, the discipline to play for the music rather than for personal glory, to repeat the same part perfectly night after night, and to make simple things sound powerful and fresh. The tension between approaches. These different philosophies have sometimes created friction in the music world. Progressive players have occasionally viewed simpler approaches as lacking ambition or settling for easy answers. Punk and minimalist players have sometimes seen progressive complexity as self-indulgent and divorced from rock's vital energy. Blues traditionalists have argued that other approaches lose touch with the emotional core of rock music. Atmospheric players have faced criticism that their style prioritizes effects over substance. These tensions reflect deeper questions about art, authenticity, and purpose. Is music's value measured by technical difficulty, emotional impact, innovation, or accessibility? Should musicians always push themselves toward greater complexity and skill, or is there wisdom in deliberate simplicity? Can technology and effects enhance musical expression, or do they become crutches that replace genuine ability? Different eras have favored different answers to these questions. The 1970s celebrated both progressive complexity and punk simplicity as reactions to what came before. The 1980s saw a new emphasis on technical virtuosity in some circles, while others embraced atmospheric textures. The 1990s brought another wave of stripped-down approaches as grunge reacted against 1980s excess. Finding common ground. Despite these different philosophical differences, most musicians have recognized that different approaches serve different purposes and have their own validity. A guitarist trained in progressive techniques might appreciate the raw energy of punk, even while pursuing a different path. A punk player might acknowledge the impressive skills of a technical virtuoso, while maintaining that such skills aren't necessary for what they're trying to express. The healthiest view recognizes that rock music is enriched by its diversity of approaches. Progressive rock pushed the boundaries of what was possible on guitar and inspired countless players to develop their abilities. Punk rock opened doors for people who might never have made music otherwise and brought rock back to its rebellious roots. Blues rock maintained connection to the tradition while allowing for endless personal expression. Atmospheric approaches expanded the sonic palette available to guitarists. Straight-ahead rock has given us some of music's most memorable and enduring songs. Each philosophy has produced great music and inspired generations of players. The technical mastery of progressive guitarists created compositions of stunning complexity and beauty. The energy and directness of punk rock sparked a revolution in rock music and influenced everything that came after. The soul and feeling of blues rock players have moved millions of listeners. The sonic landscapes created by atmospheric guitarists opened new possibilities for the instrument. The powerful simplicity of straight-ahead rock has provided the soundtrack to countless lives. The evolution of guitar playing. As time has passed, the lines between these approaches have often blurred. Modern guitarists might draw from multiple traditions, combining technical skill with punk energy, or blending atmospheric textures with blues feeling. Players have recognized that different tools serve different purposes, and the best musicians often have a broad vocabulary to draw from. The digital age has made all these approaches more accessible than ever. Aspiring guitarists can study progressive techniques through online lessons, learn punk songs from videos, absorb blues vocabulary from classic recordings, and experiment with atmospheric sounds using affordable effects. This democratization of knowledge and tools means that new players can explore multiple philosophies and find their own path. What remains constant is that passionate musicians continue to debate what matters most in guitar playing. These discussions, while sometimes heated, reflect the deep investment.
Understanding these different philosophies requires acknowledging that each emerged from specific cultural and historical contexts. Progressive rock reflected post-war optimism about progress and the possibilities of art. Punk rock expressed the frustration and anger of working-class youth facing economic uncertainty. Blues rock channeled a tradition forged in the African-American experience. Each approach made sense in its time and place, speaking to the needs and experiences of its audience.
Judging these approaches outside their context can miss the point. Punk's simplicity wasn't about inability or laziness. It was a deliberate aesthetic choice that served specific artistic and cultural purposes. Progressive complexity wasn't empty showmanship. It represented a sincere belief in music's potential as high art. Each philosophy had its reasons and its validity within its own framework. Conclusion. The diversity of approaches to rock guitar has been one of the genre's great strengths. Rather than settling into a single orthodoxy, rock has remained vital by constantly questioning and reimagining what guitar playing should be. Technical virtuosos, raw punks, soulful blues players, atmospheric experimentalists, and straight-ahead rockers have all contributed something essential to rock's ongoing story. For listeners, this diversity means there's rock music to match any mood or preference. For players, it means there are multiple valid paths to explore, each with its own challenges and rewards. Some guitarists will find fulfillment in mastering complex techniques, others in channeling raw energy, still others in creating atmospheric soundscapes or serving songs with solid playing. The